So, welcome to class 2 and our first check-in after just introducing ourselves. And now that we have our name tags and hopefully everybody can see each other's names and I can see your names, it will be much more helpful. Tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how your week went. And I always like to start with, if you have this, the things that went well, because we tend to dwell on the negative. And if we start with a positive, it's like, oh, I really, there was at least one thing out of this week that worked. And then if you have things that were struggling for you, that you were struggling with, or, just whatever it is. And then if there's any questions you have, or if there's a quote that you have and you want to lead in with that from the book, whatever you want to bring to the space. Now we have probably a good 5 minutes each or so to talk if you need that amount of time. If any, I don't think anybody in this group that I've noticed goes on and on and on, but if you do, then I would be facilitating you out of that in a little bit, just to make sure that we all get heard. Okay? So we can go around if you'd like, or we can popcorn, however you want to talk about your week is totally up to you.
I can go first.
Thank you, Daniel.
I did the meditations. I know I skipped ahead. I wasn't supposed to. It was good.
Do you want to explain that to the group who might not have done that?
I skipped ahead. I did the image, picture,
Guided
imagery. I'll be honest. I was in a hotel that night, and my friend and her daughter, we had dance competition the next day, and she was all hyper, and she couldn't get her into bed. And I was like, you know what? You guys want to do this meditation with me? So I actually sat with my student and one of her moms that are good friends of mine in the hotel room, and we all meditated together. So it was pretty cool. She got right in bed. I was like, all right, good night, girls. And I left the room, and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think skipping ahead was the right thing to do.
Well, I wanted to pick one that I knew she would connect with because she's only 11 or 12.
Right.
So I felt like the breath maybe might not have worked, and I knew the guided imagery. And it was actually my friend's first meditation, so it was kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
A good experience that I had with meditating, the reason my therapist had me come take this class was because I tend to lose my patience with my teenage girls. And my 20-year-old, we were driving at 7 a.m. to dance competition, and we had a little tiff. And she said some things to me, and normally I would fly off the handle, and I didn't even speak. She called me something disrespectful. I said, please don't speak to me that way. And she was like, do you want to get out of the car? Do you want to walk there? Do you want to get... And I just didn't say a word. And by the time we got there, it was all calm. We walked into the dance company. Now, I'm the owner of the studio, and it's my daughter who teaches for me. So we can't be, walking in like that. So we walked into the comp. We had a great day. And I felt like rather than start it with all this tension, it was hard to keep my mouth shut, but I did it, and it was so productive. So thank you for that.
Wow.
It was great.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Taking that space really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Even just a pause, a mindful pause, because then what you chose to do is you responded to the situation by not responding.
Right.
You didn't react, and then I'm sure your daughter, have you talked about it with her?
Not really.
I'm sure she noticed.
I'm sure she did.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm sure she did. I mean, she cursed at me, so normally I would have went crazy, but I just...
Good for you.
Yeah, it was good.
You.
And she's 20 now, so she's maturing a little bit, and our relationship is starting to get out of that craziness. So it was good to just kind of let
Excellent.
go.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
So I really am enjoying the book. I'm finding it so helpful. And I really struggle with maintaining my focus. I don't know if I have ADD or something. Just have trouble focusing, even in general lately. I don't know why. So I was reading this one passage. He says something about picture your thoughts like a waterfall. I just found that so helpful. and he's like, stand behind the waterfall or something. I don't remember exactly.
Right.
And I was like, so when I get like distracted in all my thoughts, I think that, and I can't say I'm really letting go of the thoughts yet,
Mhm.
but I'm feeling like a separation. And it's the
Yes.
first time that's ever happened. I was like, I'm really excited.
That is something to be very excited
yeah,
about.
I was really excited about that.
Very cool.
And now I kind of refer to that right now as just helping me when I get like spinny, I call it.
Right.
And I just think of that waterfall. I just picture it, and it just kind of helps me to focus. And then another thing that you had said last week about if you're going to pick meditation or a nap,
Yeah.
and I have trouble. I kind of use it the opposite because I have trouble waking up every night at like 3 a.m., 3:30,
Mhm.
and I'm like, meditate. I gotta get to sleep. Let me meditate, send myself to sleep. And I was like, this week I'm like, well, let me just meditate. And then if sleep happens, it happens. If not, like that kind of reassured me that just meditating is giving me the benefits. And if I don't sleep, and that's huge. That's been a huge help.
Wow. The paradox of meditation is that, and it's very typical in our American goal-oriented society, you want to get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're doers. We're not beers.
Mm.
So being feels counterintuitive to what the rest of the world is doing. But by striving and trying harder to meditate to get to sleep, you will probably be unsuccessful. By allowing and just accepting whatever shows up,
Mm-hmm.
it actually then can put you in a space of just drifting off. Lots and lots and lots of apps on meditation. I would have to say that a good 50% of the apps have sleep meditations.
Yeah.
And I know when I was going through a really stressful time in my life, I would have it right next to my bed and just pop it on. And I never really went to sleep while I was listening to the guided meditation. But shortly after I did this, I would just lay there and then I don't remember. And it never didn't work. So I was, if nothing else, to give you that. Because then, you lay there and you're, I have to go, it's 1 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock, now I have to get up at 6, or whatever goes through your minds. And there's another metaphor that Koru sometimes uses, and it's, if any of you watch basketball, so the focus that we're trying to maintain it's nuanced. So if you could think of, you're going to love this because I know you like basketball. If you think of a collegiate or anybody throwing a free throw in a basket, okay? So picture that, we've all seen that, right? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. They come up to the line, they're holding the ball, and they have to, their aim is on the basket. They have to be very focused on the basket, okay? Then, so that's what we're trying to do by looking at our breath. We're trying to look at our breath with the intensity that we would look at that basket. And then they have to let the ball go with an effort that's not too much, or they're going to just bash it into the backboard and it's going to come back out, and not too little, or they'll miss the hoop. So just enough effort to get it into the basket. And then regardless of what happens, what do? They start again. They start again. So it's, if you think of it in not just another way to look at it, I think people look at meditation as like, oh, well, I'm going to just be calm from this. And you might be, but you might not be. In fact, sometimes meditation causes a lot of anxiety. And some days it causes a lot of anxiety. And other days you're calm. But what we tend to want to do is we want to cling on to that, oh, I love that feeling, and I do not want that one again. And in doing that, that's not what Kabat-Zinn is saying. What is mindfulness? Showing up, looking at our breath in a very intentional way, on purpose, right? On purpose, without judging it, letting it be. So that might help as well, just being able to just picture that effort. This is effort. This is not about just plopping in your chair and just being like, oh, wow, that was so cool. It's not really about that. It's effort that's calculated. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
That totally makes sense, because I had sent a comment, I think, or you commented on something that I wrote about when I meditated at night. It was pretty late at night, and I had like a crazy day. I think it was Sunday, and I was like, oh, I have to meditate. So I was like, trying to get it to, and I was having such a hard time because I feel like I was maybe trying to rush it.
Right.
To get, because I knew I had to get to bed because it was late, and so I totally get that. Like, instead of just accepting the fact that I was feeling that way and kind of trying to just let it unfold, I wasn't doing that. I was like trying to push through it. But other than that, I feel like it's been helping. Like, I feel like I'm more focused when I'm talking to my daughter or my husband or we're having a conversation. I'm actually in the conversation instead of like looking at them but thinking about everything else. So it's been helping me with that. So
Great.
You know,
Awesome.
definitely.
And it's
I
all
also
only
have trouble focusing sometimes.
we all do.
All the time.
I think we were sold a bill of goods, at least I was, that multitasking is like the best thing you can ever do. And in reality, multitasking is doing nothing well. You're not focused on any one thing.
Right.
So you're doing everything just like half-assed, really.
Mm-hmm.
So when we bring ourselves into presence, I find when I'm very present for whatever it is I'm doing, it gets done a lot quicker than if I was trying to do 10 things while doing whatever it is. So, wow, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I had a good week, thanks to this. I told you that we went to therapy. My husband and I are going through a little tough time, a big tough time, not little. And this book and this class came at a great time because of that. And in my first therapy session with this guy who now that I've met him, I really like him and trust him after one session, which I think is really good. But the whole time I was scared and, didn't really want to be there, even though I want what can come at the end. Whenever it comes, I don't want to go through it. And I know I have to go through it. So this, the quote, I can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, came through to me when I read that big time. Like, that's what I'm doing. The waves are here. They're always going to be here. They're going to keep coming, and I'm surfing them. And surfing is scary, and it's hard. And I know how to surf, and it's wonderful when you catch a wave. Amazing. One of the best feelings ever, but it's really hard to catch one. It's not easy. Like meditation, it's really hard. It requires practice. It requires dedication. And so in the session, I kept thinking, love, not fear, love, not fear, love, not fear. And it helped. I wasn't, perfectly calm. I wasn't, the water wasn't, glass. But I was on the board. I caught a wave, and it was okay. And I was happy with that. And I got through the session thinking, every time I got nervous and thought, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk. I don't want to. Love, not fear. You're here for love. You're here for your relationship. It's going to be good. And I just feel so grateful that this is here with me. This is here with me. This is here with me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
And very mindful. So many more activities through the week. Through that practice of one thing a day. And I'm switching it up, and I like switching it up because everything is becoming more mindful.
Right.
Not just the one thing I picked that day.
Right. And the thing that you really, what you're doing when you sit for the 10 minutes a day or whatever, I've noticed a few of you are actually inching up your time too. I was like, oh, this is very, very interesting.
I don't even know to change that.
Yeah, you can.
I know.
You can change it. You can change it to be shorter too. There's a little thing that goes up and down. And I just assume you're going to go up, not down. No, I'm only kidding. You can do whatever you want. But one of the things that you'll find is that the container that you can hold things in, life, our arguments with people that are close to us, our fear, all of it, all of the emotions, the container, because your awareness expands, the container expands. And if you just keep thinking, I can hold more, I can hold more, I can hold more, and you will be able to. You absolutely will be able to, just by focusing your attention when you choose to. So you're not getting hijacked by the thoughts. So some of us in this room know Brene Brown. Does anybody else know Brene Brown? She's a researcher from University of Houston. And she has a sentence that she uses many, many times a day, and is a really good sentence to use when your thoughts start getting crazy, hijacking you, and you're not even sure, like, what's happening. The story I'm making up is. The story I'm making up is. Because what happens when we're having confrontations, when things are, jamming us in? Our container, we want to get smaller. We want to get tighter. We want to contract. We don't want to do this. That feels way too vulnerable. Like I'm exposing myself here. Not happening. So by saying to yourself, the story I'm telling myself, what is the story? Because often our thoughts are just a story. And way more often, the story is not true. But we are operating our lives because we now believe this. Our thoughts are literally just chemical reactions that are happening. And then they can trigger an emotion. And then that becomes this whole big thing that we believe it. And then the research shows that 70 to 80% of the things that you thought and said yesterday, you will say today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So that's a pretty, I don't know if it's Kabat-Zinn that said it, but I heard it somewhere and I always talk about this. So imagine your thoughts or your story, whatever it's going to be. Would you rather place your story as a straight line in the water? Or would you rather see it be a straight line in the sand? Or would you rather see it in a rock? Which one is going to flow better? Obviously. The water, the sand, or the rock. I know for me, for most of my life, I was digging those trenches big time. And the rewiring of your brain, this is not even something this is real science now. That 7 to 8 minutes, which is why, try to do the 10. 7 to 8 minutes literally rewires your brain. And it doesn't take a long time. You're already labeling, you're talking about benefits that are big, but physiologically something's happening. So even if it doesn't feel like it's working, trust the research that says it absolutely works. Absolutely works. Can work if you work it. So, thanks. Yes? Miss Amy?
I want to say that just now, listening to everyone, I just noticed how I can actually pay attention.
We knew that.
I'm usually listening to everyone, I listen to you, but my mind might wander just a little bit, whatever, but I was totally with every single conversation, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Wow.
So that's something, but
That is something. That's great. Good job.
So as you know from my logs last week, I had a little bit of a slow start. I was having a hard time getting more than 5 minutes together. I was it was just kind of frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And then you emailed me, and then Sunday I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And I did 10 minutes. And the Sunday before that I couldn't do more than 5 or 6. And I think maybe it was the time of day that wasn't working for me. And so this week I've been doing it in the morning and before work, which is really when I have to do it.
Right.
And it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Did it this morning on the train. I had to go to court in the city this morning, and I was I had something stressful to do, and it just, even with the people talking on the train and everything else, I put meditation music on
Right.
on my iPod.
Right.
But it felt really good. And then I read the book on the train too. Wasn't sure I was going to get through all those.
Sounded like a
those
big
chapters.
task last week, didn't it?
boy, yeah.
And look at you.
This one part. Concentration can be of great value, but can also be seriously limiting if it becomes seduced by the pleasant quality of this inner experience and come to see it as a refuge from life.
Whoa.
Yes, so
Yeah.
now.
You are a
Sorry.
warrior.
Sorry. Okay.
I can't focus on that.
Sorry.
Okay, a little bit
All right.
slower. My brain can't
It's a
handle
couple
it.
of sentences. It'll take me a couple of
What
sentences.
page
That's
is it?
fine.
Page 74.
Thanks.
Concentration can be of great value, but can also be seriously limiting if you become seduced by the pleasant quality of this inner experience and come to see it as a refuge from life in an unpleasant and unsatisfactory world. You might be tempted to avoid the messiness of daily living for the tranquility of stillness and peacefulness. This, of course, would be an attachment to stillness, and like any strong attachment, it leads to delusion. It arrests development and short circuits the cultivation of wisdom. So what I took from that was, so I stay home a lot. I don't really get out and socialize a whole lot because for a while I didn't feel safe around people. And it's very peaceful there, and it hadn't been for a long time, and it is now, you know. So if I interacted with new people, not my good friends, you know, but new people, it would bring me stress, and it would make me feel afraid or unsafe or whatever. And just this past week, someone new from my past was introduced into my life, someone great, and I just happen to be meditating now. So when that stuff comes in and those thoughts come in, I've been meditating, and it's been helping me. So, that's all.
That's
Thank
a
you.
lot. Because, yeah, there was a little bit of a slow start. Like, hi, Amy, I haven't heard from you in 3
Yeah,
days. How's
yeah.
it going?
Yeah.
And
Because
then,
last week is when it was like,
right,
oh
a
my
lot
God,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah,
A lot going
yeah.
on. The
a lot of
container.
fear and a lot of like,
Yeah. And it's kind of like, you know, so it's fear.
Yeah.
What is fear? Bring curiosity to that. Am I gonna die if I sit in fear? Is that actually gonna happen? Is the story I'm telling myself around this true?
Right.
How do I know it's true? And then keep drilling down. Like, is it really true? What are the facts around that? Let me, you know, so quiz yourself on that. Because often, just like I said, we believe, and these are strong emotions, not to minimize them at all. They're strong, gripping emotions. But that's what being able to have a focused choice around where you place your thoughts, that's what happens. It gives you that freedom to say, look at that, there's fear again. I'm going to take 5 minutes and just watch fear. I'm going to observe fear. Our thinking minds get a lot of activity. Okay, you're thinking all day long, you know. Our observing minds are not really, they're not as strong because we don't really take the time to sit still. Even having conversations, we're still thinking. We're also observing our thinking. And now being able to take a perspective from behind the waterfall and saying, wow, look at that, that's my thought over there. And all of that does, what that does is it gives us that space. So we're not like attached to the hijacking thought, you know? Or at least we make a decision that's skillful instead of just knee-jerk and then we don't even know why we're doing it because we're unconscious or we have been unconscious. I know for me, unconscious for a very long time. Thought I was conscious, but then when I started to really go on this path, it was like, wow, there's so much more to see. So thank you. Cool.
For Lent, one of my Lenten things was to, when someone was talking to me, to totally focus on them. That's one of my, that's difficult for me. I'm always thinking, especially being here sometimes, people really have a lot to say sometimes. And they can go on. And my mind can go, I have so much to do, oh my gosh, would you just get to the point already? So I had some practice with that at Lent. So I think that's sort of carrying through, and this is certainly adding to that. So that's one thing that I think has been going better too. I think for me, finding a good time, I haven't even tried the morning. I seem to instinctively be shying away from morning. I don't know why, but it just doesn't strike me as a good time for me. I'm very alert in the morning, and I like the morning, and I feel like, I don't know, I need to do this when I need it. I feel like, if that makes sense. So after work's been my favorite time. I go over to the little church when it's locked up, and I go in all by myself, and that's my favorite spot. And yesterday I wasn't able to do that. And I did it when I got home after I did a few things, and it was the first time I snuck a peek at the timer and said, how much longer have I got? So I was like, okay, this is not really the best time for me. So I hope to figure out how I can really make the time to stay there after. So I really liked it, but I gotta say that it doesn't seem to carry through the day. Everybody's talking about this great feeling during the day, and for me it's like work. And then, oh yeah, this. Okay,
Separate,
let me go
two-
do
two
this.
separate.
It seems very separate right
Yeah.
now. I'm not sure why, but I like to think that because I'm just really focused. I've been trying not to multitask.
Mhm.
Things have categories though, and I found like today, oh my gosh, it was like 5 minutes this, 5 minutes that, 5 minutes that, one thing after the other. But I still seemed to be very focused on what I was doing at the time. So that's tied in with the speaking and paying attention. So I think the paying attention has been good. But I gotta say, I'm kind of puzzled by the whole thing. This whole thing is puzzling me because, you know, there's a couple of times they talk in the book mentions that this is not clearing your mind, this is not bringing you peace, and that's always what I thought it was supposed to be. I'm supposed to just calm the mind and let it go to nowhere. And I'm like, this is not
Let me
it
know
at
if you
all.
find a shortcut to doing that, because I haven't found one yet.
So no wonder it never worked when I tried before. You know, it's like-
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no wonder Liza said I could never be good at this.
Don't listen to her. You're already good at it.
So, so this observing the thoughts and is something new. But I did have a question. 132, if anybody wants to look. Getting to what exactly is my way, meaning way with a capital W. What path am I on? What do I truly love? Contemplating what is my way is an excellent element to inject into our meditation practice. Now, how is that not thinking? I'm torn between, do I think of that? Better not to think at all. Instead, persist in asking the questions. So that just the whole thing puzzled me, seemed beyond my comprehension of what they're trying to get to in that spot. But
Okay.
I almost feel like that's like too advanced for me. I have to really just continually observe for a while before I start asking myself any questions.
I think that you can, there's a lot of different, you can go into meditation with an intention. Just like you know, people show up to prayer, which I believe, because I've been getting a lot of this in your logs, you know, praying, God, you know, all these things we talk about. And I think there's confusion there. And I've been asked that in my other class, like, is praying meditation? Is meditation prayer? And I was always like, oh yeah, there's the exact same things. And then now for years I've been kind of really looking at that and exploring that question. And now I'm not so sure that I believe that. I believe that meditation is giving you a space of listening. And prayer is more talking, which I was always good at that. But then in my experience of however you see the source, God, the universe, whatever you see it as, in my experience of that, that's a soft space, that's a quiet space, that's a, I'll wait till you're done talking, Karen, and then maybe I can get one word in. But I never stop talking. So I would not try to inflect at this moment. I would stick with just noticing what's showing up instead of trying to manufacture something to show up. So the big thing that's going to happen, and you'll notice it, and you already have, is that you're going to have attachments to different things. Or you're not going to want something to happen. So I don't want it to be in the morning because that's all planning, judging, making it a certain way. And the present moment, the big source moment, is saying, I'm sitting right here, but you're trying to say, you don't want me. You don't like this moment. Now when you really get the gravity of that, that's like, wow, when I start to really think that way, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy that I'm even, but that's what I was saying. No, this moment isn't good enough. I want this moment, I want it my way. It's all about controlling the moment. It's about controlling the situation, which most of us are very good at that as well. So for now, recognizing, can I just stay in the middle of trying to have it this way and not wanting it to be that way? Can I just stay in the middle? And if I'm not, look at that. oh, there I am. I'm striving again. I want this. Or I'm thinking again. Or I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And then just non-judgmentally say, wow, look at how good I am at doing that. I do it a lot. And then coming back. That's meditation. The coming back is the meditation. Not necessarily, I don't really know anybody that can fully empty their mind for more than a couple of seconds. But it's the coming back, and it's the knowing that you're thinking or you're doing whatever you're doing, making up the story or, having your way, whatever it is. I'm going to need to read this again because I gave Sarah my book, so I will read it again, and then I will talk about it more next week. But I think for now, my sense is just stay with the simpler focus on your breath and notice what shows up. And then notice what you do with that. Will you judge it? Will you decide it needs to be different? That's the awareness. That's the expanding the awareness. And then you can decide to do something about it or not. But you're not going to decide to do it in the meditation necessarily right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think that noticing seems to be coming easily. And I noticed how usually my thoughts are about future.
Yep. Well, there's
just
pretty much two
hardly
places.
ever past, hardly ever present, it's almost always future. So that's been interesting.
Well, that's huge learning right there. Huge learning. And knowing that the future isn't going to happen yet, can now you bring yourself back and say, well, do I want to, I think the mindful 20-something starts with, so how long do you want to live before you realize that every moment of your life you've just given up to either living in the future or living in the past? How many years do you want to do that? And they're talking to 20-year-olds. And we're not 20. So how many years have I already given up? Well, you might be, but I'm not. So just saying, how many moments do you want to give up to not being present for what is showing up because your mind is somewhere else, and it doesn't have to be. So I would, from what I'm hearing, thank you for the questions. Thank you for the, I like to hear that, this is not easy. This is a tough path, a worthy path, but a lot of great stuff, Leslie, a ton of great stuff that already just happened in 1 week. And finding a time, I think, is probably the biggest thing, fitting it into your life, and that's really, you just have to play around with that. I like to get up in the morning and try to go right away before I have my head filled with thoughts. But that doesn't work for everybody's life. If you have a child, if you have, so you just keep trying different things, knowing the place, going over and being able to have the whole church to yourself. That's huge. Not everybody has that. Finding a space where you can, get the cats out of the room or the, people or whatever has to happen. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
So I feel like the week since I was here was like 5 years.
I
But I've been thinking about it, I think so much happened to me, but I also want to say, I think the whole lighting, weather, I feel like my whole, I remember one day this week, I'm pretty sure it was this week, my son came down and he ran in the kitchen and he was like, do you see how light it is out there?
Yeah.
It hasn't been like this before, right, Mom? And so I think this week was also a little shift like that, which makes it longer, which makes us stay out longer.
Yeah,
But I really
Yeah.
was a long week, but not, every week is long when you're busy. I don't think it was specifically for me, extra
Right.
long. I did do the meditation in the morning a little bit. I did more meditating than I logged because years ago, I probably with you, sorry, years and years ago, we talked about praying at whenever, driving your car.
Right.
So I sort of implemented prayer that way. So I sort of implemented meditation that way. So I only log the ones when I'm home by myself so I can play the phone and
Right.
hear the little voice, and that's what I've been logging, but not logging all the other ones. And so an interesting one for me was I had an interview in a school, and it was late at night. It was 6:45, and I was in the hallway by myself. And I'm sitting in a chair like this, and I'm like, well, this is a good time. But I couldn't close my eyes because if they came out somewhere else, they'd think I was a wacko. So I was like, all right. And I'm just going to do the simple breathing one. And that's what I did. Oh my gosh. I actually got rid of all thoughts. I just sat there, and I was just breathing. And I'm looking at the tiles across. And then the tiles started to jump a little. I was like, oh my God. You said don't judge. I'm not going to judge.
Yeah.
I'm just breathing.
That's
focusing,
very cool.
Focusing on my, and then
because the tile's not this, all that, like when you take the eye test and they say is the horizontal or vertical darker? You ever, if you ever
Yeah.
get your eye test, they say that. All of a sudden, just a cross comes out of it. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. It's just reminding me.
Wow.
Oh, that's so, and I just kept breathing. I was watching. I was like, I wish someone was here to see it with me. But I'm like,
I feel like I'm there with you right now. I'm like,
maybe I'm just really tired, but I'm just gonna hang here for a while. And then I was like, all right, I have to stop because if they come out, I'm like, no, I don't. So I just did that and then they called me in, and I was like, hi. I had no idea what I was just doing, but anyway, that was.
what a better use of your time
Yeah.
than what you might have been
Yeah,
distracted
it was
on your
just-
phone or reading something
Yeah, I
else
was
or.
just doing
And that's a seeing meditation.
Oh, really?
And there's
Oh.
there's a lot to see when you're really you don't have to close your eyes. That's just for some people it just helps bring out take away distraction.
Yes.
But you don't have to close your eyes. In fact, some people don't feel safe closing their eyes. So you could stare at the floor, but what you did by just very specifically looking at one thing, like you could look at a petal of the flower on that picture there, and just by that's where your gaze is now the object of your meditation could be what you're seeing plus the breath, the focus. So you're focusing your attention on something. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
The only other thing I would add is today, right before I was coming, I was standing by my island in the kitchen barefoot, and I could sense like a firmer footing. Like I feel like often when I'm more balanced, I feel that, but I sensed that today just before I was coming.
So more grounded
Yes,
in
like
your
you-
body, in
yeah.
your space.
Yeah,
in
like
your,
you could feel
Yeah.
like the bottom of your feet on the floor, like you were, grounded.
You're going to love the meditation that I'm going to teach you tonight. Awesome. Okay.
The last thing, I'm sorry, I said
No,
one
that's
thing,
okay.
I did not do the chicken one all waiting. I was like, I'm not doing it early in the morning. I can't do it in the car. I wasn't going to do that in the hallway while waiting.
I did notice that not too many people chose chicken breast. I think one person did. And I think one person did.
Before my favorite.
And well, one of the things
That was a good time.
yeah. One of the things that's interesting is that it's really about just getting a flavor for a lot of different techniques. And over the course of, should you stick with this, and I really hope you will, that over the course of time, what works today might not work tomorrow, but you have now some options to pick from. And when Carrie did it, it was like, my body is high energy and I need to bring it down in several minutes. I don't have 10 minutes, I have several minutes, and it'll work. It'll work.
Right.
So at least you have the tool. The one thing I did want to address, though, because you brought it up, the logs are not something that you have to do. I look at it as, for me, I like to write. I figure out stuff by reflective writing, and having somebody on the other side of that, to me, is an advantage. But if it becomes like, and when I was tapping in with Amy, it wasn't like, where are you? I haven't heard from you. You have to. It was just like, how are you? Are you okay? Is everything good? Do you like? It's an invitation for you to take the time to figure it out for yourself. But it's not something that if it becomes I have to do it, I have to meditate. That's not the point. The point is stepping into a space of a choice because it's going to benefit you. So if you can do it, great, and then I'll be on the other side answering. But if it's a problem, then, but pay attention to why. Then I always want to know, I don't want to know it, you should want to know it. Why am I having a resistance to that? What's that about? Because there's always like these little sneaky things that go on in your mind. Your ego will pop in there like, oh, you don't need to do that stuff today. And that's the exact day you need to do it more. You don't need to write to her. That's a pain in the butt. Stop writing to her. She's being controlling. Pay attention to what happens. That's the learning. Not so much whether you do what I ask you. That's where you're going to see.
Well, I think the reason I didn't is just because I didn't have the phone next to me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
it's not safe for you to
I
do it
wasn't
on your
really-
drive. Yeah, no, I agree.
Like I just was like, that'll be this time.
Right.
Yeah.
And the point is that you're meditating lots.
Yeah.
All of you are doing it different. Like, you're not just doing your 10 minutes. You're doing here, there. That's beautiful. It's only 1 week. That's great. So thanks. Cool.
I didn't realize about the reading that it was, I was just confused about it. And then I started reading and I found it too much for me to take on. Like I felt like there's this gold nugget and I'm just moving to the next one and then I'm moving to the next one. There were all these gold nuggets in here and I felt like I need to spend 3 days with this nugget and then 3 days with this nugget, or these nuggets are all gone. I don't hold on to stuff like that. My brain can't, or not yet. So I love the reading. I think it's really powerful and good for me, but I have to go much slower, or I'm not holding on to any
I
of it
feel the same way.
personally.
Yeah,
And
it sounds maybe like you might be
Yeah,
doing
I'm
this
even behind.
you're behind because the teacher said you should be at this page by this
You
day.
know me.
But-
If I gotta do it, I'm supposed
Right,
to
but
do
it's
it, I'll
really
do it.
good wise advice
Mhm.
from somebody who knows. So again, if it doesn't work, what I say doesn't work, it's just my,
Right.
don't do it.
So I did. I let go, and I just said that's where I'm stopping because I can't try and fill this. It's not working. I also found I've never really meditated in the morning except on weekends. That's the only time I do it because I get up at 5:30 to go to work, and I'm out the door by 6:20. So it's just too early for me personally. So what I have been doing is like a 5-minute stillness in the morning or a 10-minute stillness in the morning of just being still and breathing. And it's been nice to give myself permission of it can be 5 minutes. If that's all you got, it's okay. It can be 5 minutes. And that's been good for me. I do a much bigger chunk of time in the afternoon or in the evening, depending on how it works for my family. But on the weekends, I do like the morning, and then I'm able to shift. But I already have kind of my routine of weekdays. This is what I do. Weekends, this is what I do. It helped me a lot I used to always read first and then meditate or be in silence. Now, Karen had said, well, what about if you did 10 minutes in the beginning? Just what I found for me, because I can come into it hot. I come into a lot of things hot. So I could come in.
Even if you didn't know her, you already figured that out, right? Yeah.
I could come in, still myself, read, because now I felt like I was porous and ready to have it seep in, and then be silent and sit with what soaked in for me. That felt good to me. That felt right to me. And then sometimes I've been reading again and then sitting again, depending on the day, depending on what I need at the time. Another huge thing for me, I think I've always struggled with the disconnect. I know for a long time I was a Christian at this time of the day and no other times. And then I realized, oh, that's a pretty big disconnect. And so then for me, I feel like with prayer and meditation, I keep taking steps, and the hardest shift is at work. I know I talked about this last time. Work is extremely stressful. I've got 22 kids, some of them in trauma. A lot going on, kids coming at you, kids want you right now, and like having the right words. So I have a gong, a very loud gong that goes off on my computer every hour now. And everyone knows it's silence at that time. And I told them, you can breathe, you can listen, you can close your eyes, you can keep your eyes open. This is your choice, but you may not speak when the gong is on. So everyone stops, and it's amazing in that, like one time I noticed it in particular, math is ending and we're going to the next subject. So the transitions are always hard. And by the end of math, you know, half of them are like, and I'm like, okay, here comes writing. And the gong goes off, and the stillness happens. And then all that mayhem that happens by the end of the period dissipates, and we start our next period so differently. And it's unreal.
Wow.
And I feel like this huge, oh my gosh, do you know how long I've been working for this? This one shift for my kids, for me, for our relationship with each other, it's huge. and I just feel like pinch me.
Wow. The little baby steps, and I think I might have written that in somebody's log, it's just about small nuances. You know, sometimes I think we think, oh my God, this meditation thing, it's a big deal. I can't, so many people, I can't do it. I'm not a meditator. I can't quiet my head. Neither can I. But then when you hear these small things, these very tiny things that people do, that's the shift. It's just about a shift. It's not about a big, massive, change. It's just tiny little shifts.
And the only reason why that happened, by the way, was because I was on a women's retreat, and Grace, who ran the retreat, said to us, "You will not take this with you. It's impossible. This weekend was this weekend. This was healing and nurturing and all those things. Change one thing. One small thing." And so I was like, okay, one thing. I can totally do that. And that's when I thought of the gong. One thing.
Big one thing, though.
Yeah.
Cool.
Who knew the one thing was so big?
Thank you, Sarah.
I need a gong at work.
You can
Everybody's
do it.
got-
I have one on my phone too.
I have one on my phone.
It's not for children surrounding me, it's for myself.
Yeah.
Because I am lost in workland. I could work 14 to 16 hours a day and not stop. And I've been doing it now for 30-something years, and I really, starting in January, when I mentioned for day one, I had a big surgery, and I said, I'm not gonna do this anymore, I'm gonna change my ways. They lived without me for 3 months, and they can live without me again. And now I'm back in Workland, and it's happening again. There I am, out in the parking lot at my conference call, and this time I actually hung up.
Good for
But
you.
I would say the meditation, I'm all in. I think it's helpful. I've used it once at work already when I felt myself losing control because things were not happening the way I expect them to happen and need them to happen. I'm relying on other people that don't always do what I want them to do.
Yeah, I know. I hate
And
those
so,
people too. We all don't like those people.
so I stopped and I actually meditated at work, which is for me to take 10 minutes in
It's
the
big.
office is like amazing, and it worked really well. I found that I was able to actually give myself 10 minutes. But I did intersperse prayer in there because I feel like I need to call God to help me.
Then that's
Um,
awesome.
And
Then
that
do
was,
that. Yeah.
it was okay.
Yeah.
And then, so I was, while I was busy congratulating myself about this, little success, a couple of days later, I was trying to fix a mistake that happened while I was ill. I saw the mistake and I should be happy to know that it was there and I recognized it, and I was trying to have it fixed. And so I gave some directions. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to follow Koru. I want you to blah, 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 blah. And everyone said, okay, we get it. And then after it happened, I looked and said, oh my God, now it's worse, much worse. So I called the person responsible, and instead of acting like me and who I want to be, I screamed and yelled and used the F word and four times in one sentence. And then I hung up the phone and I said, who was that? That's not what I want to be.
Yeah.
Who is this person? So then I was, my head was shaking. I was like trying to hold my head steady. And I just did the same thing. I actually laid down and I meditated for about 10 minutes. And then I said, that's not enough. And I went for another 20. That's not in my log. And I really, then I came, I realized, and I again interspersed prayer, and I said, I gotta just stop this. This is just, I'm killing myself. I'm gonna hurt somebody around me by saying things that I shouldn't say. Picked up the phone, apologized to the person who was like, look, I understand, I get it. And so then I'm back on the horse again, trying to be the person I want to be as opposed to some crazy lunatic at work.
Right.
And it when you have something all encompassing and all consuming, whether it's a home problem or relationship problem, or whether you're not like me and it's work, this can be a respite.
Oh,
This can help to disconnect that, I'm finding, and that's really important. I need that disconnect, because if I don't do it, as much as I love my family and I love being home with them,
I'm gonna go back to my computer like some kind of a moth to the flame, and it'll be 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Doesn't matter. I'll be there working, and they'll be like, "What are you doing, Mom?" I'll be like, "Oh, just working." This helps to break that chain.
Right.
It makes me think internally. So that's number one. That's a good news thing. And also the person that I cursed like a maniac has forgiven me, which is a good thing. But the other thing is in the book it says something about we spend a lot of our thoughts thinking of the past and thinking of the future. That is so true. I've been all week long saying, wait a second, here I am. I'm here with you guys right now. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do when I get home. I'm not going to think about what happened during the day. I'm here. I'm right now.
Excellent.
And so I'm really working on that. And I think it's a very, to realize it is very helpful.
Right, opening your
Very
eyes
helpful,
to it.
yeah.
And one of the things in Koru, they use a metaphor about driving your car, and now you're driving your car along the road and you get stuck in the mud. And now, what do you try to do? I'm going to gun this sucker, and I'm just going to ram my way out of this mud. And what generally happens is we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And what meditation does, what taking a breath does, is like, okay, I'm stuck in the mud. Okay, so what could I do? Can I call somebody? It puts you in problem-solving mode, as opposed to just like reactive, crazy, screaming at people. This isn't working. Nobody's doing what. And then you have a moment to say, okay, now you see a lot of opportunity where before you saw nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really big shift, and it will happen more and more and more, because now you're, like I always say, you can't not know what you know. You can't not know once you know. So now you know. The light has gone on. So keep it on.
I want to say one more thing. Okay.
Okay. We're way over
Okay.
the time. Are you
Mine-
guys able to stay a little bit tonight? Because we're way over the time.
Mindfulness bell is what it's called, and one of the things I had to give myself permission to do was to listen to the whole minute. And it's like, how can I take a minute every hour? And then I thought, that's so ridiculous. But it shifted everything for me, like you said.
I'm going to try it. It
Put
sounds
it
like
in,
a
put
great
it on
idea.
your computer.
Yeah.
Mindfulness bell, and I made it kind of loud so it resounds.
Well,
That's
I
all.
love the idea because I've got a built-in bell every hour.
Right.
There you go.
If you all
do.
heard
There
of
you
it
go.
at 7.
Stop what you're doing. Take some
I'm
breaths.
gonna do that.
And
Because I always hear it.
yeah.
It was ringing when she was talking about
Yes.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have one on my phone too.
The,
Yeah.
the bell.
Yeah. Oh, the bell's
Oh, the
outside.
bell's
It's every hour, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Not tonight? Okay. All right, so we took a little bit of a long time with that, but I think it was worth